everyone. What's up? My name is Hayden, and I'm the owner and the head coach at Hill Pursuit. I also coach for a triathlon and an endurance team, Victory Multisport. You're listening to a very special episode of the Hill Pursuit podcast. This is a preview of the Happy Valley 70.3 half Ironman course. And I primarily rode the bike course. I didn't swim and I didn't run, but I did do a little bit of recon at both transition 1 and transition 2. Throughout this podcast, I will do my best to work through some of the intricacies of the athlete guide as well. That being said, it actually might be beneficial if you're listening on a streaming platform of Spotify, Podbean, Google, Apple. It might be beneficial to actually check out the YouTube channel Hill Pursuit. In the YouTube video of this podcast, I'm going to refer to some video. I'm going to pull up some images. I'm going to discuss my overall power. I'm going to show you some cool metrics for the big hill climb at around mile 40 or so. I'm going to discuss what that power output is like. I'm going to show you some elevation maps. I'm going to refer to the bike course itself. So there will be some beneficial some images that I'll be referring to. So if you did want to check that out, be sure to watch this podcast on the Hill Pursuit YouTube channel. Of course, that will be linked in the show notes, whether or not you're listening on Spotify, Podbean, wherever, Apple, Google, wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, it'll also, all the content will be linked under the YouTube podcast as well. What's also really neat about this episode specifically is throughout the course of the preview ride, I took a lot of voice notes while I was riding specific segments of the course. And I'm going to play those voice notes throughout this entire episode, and you're going to hear them as raw as they are, right? So it is a very, very windy course, all right? So there's secret one, right? It's a very windy course, so the audio is not going to be perfect. So I apologize for that. But just know I do want to play these voice notes as raw as they were when I was riding, so you get that real-time reaction. So just know that you'll be hearing that as well. Like I said before, this podcast streams on Spotify, Podbean, Apple, Google. Of course, we're on YouTube as well. Please do not hesitate to reach out to me. My name's Hayden. You can contact me directly at hillpursuit@gmail.com. We're on all social media, Instagram, Facebook, all that stuff at Hill Pursuit. So you can find us, follow us, reach out there as well. And you can also just check out our website. We have a blog. We have some nutrition and dietary counseling and advice and contact information, as well as, of course, coaching information if that interests you. And also links to this podcast episode and all previous podcast episodes. So please check out the website. That's just hillpursuit.com. There's actually no www. Just find the website, hillpursuit.com, and you'll find all of that information at that website. Of course, like I said, all of this is linked in the show notes. Please check the show notes out, follow along, and let's just get on to the good stuff now. At this point, sit back, relax, and enjoy this special episode of the Hill Pursuit podcast, the Happy Valley 70.3 race. Okay, there's all your athlete guide stuff, your pre-race intro, your race day information. The most important one I want to draw your attention to, this is a little bit different. Hopefully you've noticed this when you read through. If you've competed in some half iron distance races before, you'll notice that typically the bike cutoff, okay, so you swim, finish transition 1, and the bike course. You have 5.5 hours to do that. Within this race, so because, if you're following along on social media, because the elevation of the course, assuming the bike cutoff is actually 6 hours, not 5.5. This is not uncommon. It's been done before, but I know they don't do it a whole lot. In this case, you have that extra 30 minutes. Again, if you're someone who's raced a half iron distance before, you have 30 extra minutes to complete swim, T1, and the bike course, a total of 6 hours to complete those three. Now, within this bike course, there's between 3,400 and 3,600 feet of elevation. So there's quite a bit of elevation to traverse. So I understand that there's time added, but that's the biggest thing I wanted to kind of draw your attention to. And then that you have a similar run cutoff, but it adds that extra 30 in that was added from the bike cutoff. So 8:30 for the run cutoff. And I just wanted to draw your attention to that. That's the biggest difference in terms of all the pre-race stuff and information that that Ironman has put out. It appears that that's the biggest difference. So hopefully that puts a lot of people at ease in terms of any type of anxiety or stress over the elevation in the hills, the climbing that's involved in the terrain of this course. That extra 30 minutes should hopefully put a lot of athletes in a much better headspace. So you do have that extra 30 minutes. That's not to say, take your time and dog it, but that extra 30 minutes is going to help a lot of different athletes. So use that time. Just know that you have that time. And that's the biggest note I wanted to make right off the bat. Okay, let's talk about transition and the swim. So the transition area is absolutely beautiful in transition one. It's a very, very large asphalt parking lot, and honestly, it's extremely close to the beach. So I imagine that the swim exit to transition will be really quick. In some previous Ironman races, getting to transition area out of the water, sometimes you're like winding through weird paths that they create, but this one seems like it will be really, really efficient because of how close the actual transition one area is to the water. The swim itself, clockwise, you're breathing to the right, your buoys are to the right. Seems really, really simple. Honestly, I did not swim, but the body of water was super, super calm. You can see in the video, very, very calm body of water. And that was about the start time of what the swim start time will actually be. So extremely calm water. No clue what the water temperature was when I was there just a week ago, or no clue what it will be. So don't even bother asking. But the swim itself looks to be very, very simple in design. Breathing right, buoys to the right, clockwise, couple turns, and then again a quick time frame out of the water into transition one, a very, very large asphalt parking lot. Okay, let's get into the bike course itself coming out of transition one. And before I do, a lot of people typically want to know like what my fitness level is, how long the bike took me, all that stuff. So I'll just share that real quick. I did ride with a few friends and athletes for the Victory Multisport team that I coach. So I do want to get you some of those numbers here real quick. The course took us about 3 hours and 45 minutes. My average power output was 165, normalized power of 222. My average heart rate, I'm 33 years old. My average heart rate was 139 beats per minute. My peak heart rate on the big hill around mile 40 was 176. Overall, this comes out to like an average speed of about 15.2. So it really was just like a really nice cruise and a nice way to kind of just experience the course without pushing too hard. I share some of this information so that when we do get to the big climb, you understand the power output that I was putting out relative to what the entire ride kind of consisted of. So just so that you can get some context for how hard not only just how hard I was actually pushing in terms of power and in terms of watts, but also in terms of some of the physiological responses that are happening in real time throughout this very hilly course. So without further ado, let's dive into the bike course. Okay, at this point in the show, you're going to start hearing some voice notes that I was taking in real time. Um, Again, another disclaimer, these voice notes were taken on a cell phone during the course while I was riding the course. So please know that there is going to be some, you'll hear some wind, a little bit of static. It's not going to be perfect sound quality. But at this point in time, I'm going to play these voice notes, and then from time to time, I'll take a step back, I'll take a moment, and I'll give a little summary of what you heard in real time while I was on the course. All right, initial reaction to the first turnaround out of transition is that it is complete silliness, to be honest. It seems a little strange that they're having a turnaround. There's really no great place to even do the turnaround. So it's basically like a mile or so out and back, and it seems really silly, but I also anticipate some congestion back in transition areas. I imagine that's where we turn off after the turnaround. So coming out of that U-turn by transition is super fast. Lots of aero, pretty flat. A couple miles of some speed right to start, which is cool. Okay, a couple things to unpack here. Transition area to the turnaround. It's only about a mile, maybe 1.1 or 1.2. The turnaround, if you watch the video, is probably right by that stop sign. That's right where it took me, but I kind of kept going for a little bit because I was hoping that there would be a circle to kind of that everybody could take, but there isn't. So I imagine it's going to be a really tight, not the best place to have a turnaround, because there's no real. It's not like there's double or triple wide road for a turnaround, but that's likely where it will be, right in that area. And then yes, as you're making your way back towards the transition area after that U-turn, it's fast. It's very fast. And then it continues to be fast for a couple miles after that. So you'll be in aero and you're going to be moving. I originally thought there would be some congestion on your way back to transition, but I think that is incorrect. Coming out of transition, you hang a right immediately, and on your way back, you just continue straight through. It's not like you're passing anybody or taking any weird turns. You're just going straight through the same area that athletes who are coming out of transition are taking a right at that four-way. So there should not be any issue. Originally, I thought there might be, but lots and lots of speed after that U-turn. Main road coming out of Bald Eagle State Park. Really flat, smooth surface, a little bit of downhill actually. Pretty much flying so far through everything. Lots of speed for like the first, looks like 5 to 7 miles. Main road 150 is actually kind of crowded, and I doubt will be closed to traffic. But about 9 miles in, and it's nothing but speed so far, except for those just a couple small handful of weird turns and back roads, but pretty fast first 10 miles. Okay, a couple things here as well. So Route 150, if you notice in that image, is actually not closed. It actually says event traffic. All right, so there will be some, I'm assuming, local and event traffic on that road, and it was pretty busy even early in the morning on the weekend when I rode. The only other thing I'll say is the course is super fast. This is only about 10 miles in, but honestly, and I'll say it now, and I'll come back to this if I need to, but the first like almost 20 to low 20s, 20 to 22 miles are just very fast. You'll see that in the elevation profile as well. There's a couple small odd turns, but aside from that, you're an aero and you can hammer these first 20-ish miles. A couple really weird back streets, side roads. once you turn on to Sayers Dam, you really have to slow down. Just some weird, small, quick turns. So about 13 miles in, and it's really fast course up to now. I would guess people would need to seriously calibrate the effort though, because we're only going like 350 feet of elevation. Train tracks about 15 miles in are really, really smooth. Can probably fly them pretty quick. About 16 miles in, a couple small rolling hills in the last couple miles, but honestly, pretty quick course so far. The roads are a little, roads have a decent amount of traffic, so I'm curious whether or not some of these will be closed or partially closed, but really no big concerns up to this point. Road conditions are nice too. I think total elevation is only like 600 so far, so still quite a bit to go. But this is about 16, 17 miles in. All right, so I know I said up to about 20, you could really like lay it down. I'm not coming off of that point. I still think that's true, but at the same time, I do think it's important that at the very least, you're just mindful of the effort you're putting out up to that 20-mile marker, because you're really, the elevation up to that point is just so minimal. It feels like you can fly those first 20 miles, but the only reason I bring this back up in kind of a contradictory sense is that you just have to be mindful of the mileage you've traveled, the elevation that you have not yet traversed. Just be very mindful of it. Sure, you can lay it down, you can stay in aero for a while and really throw some watts down, but just be mindful of what you've traveled, what you've covered, and what you still have yet to cover up to that point. Turning onto Jacksonville Road is great. Not a sharp turn, really nice and smooth. You can keep a lot of speed onto Jacksonville. Jacksonville Road starts off awesome. A couple small rolling hills, but it's a back road, pretty smooth. Again, up to this point, still a lot of potential for speed, which is great. About 19 miles in. About 20 miles in, finally some rolling hills on Jacksonville, but this is really the first time that there are any hills, and there's still not much. Total elevation is still only like 800, so still not a whole lot going on, but there's a climb coming up. Close to 23 miles in, just crossed over about 1,000 feet of elevation, but you're on Jacksonville for a while. Honestly, it's a really nice road, back road, pretty smooth, but yeah, just crossed 1,000 feet at about 23-ish miles. Okay, you can absolutely fly on Jacksonville. It's a nice transition onto Jacksonville. It's a back road, but it's also a very, very smooth road. Tiny bit of rolling hills. I say they're rolling hills because they technically are, but man, they're so minimal. Finally, around 20 or so, you can hear up to about 23. You finally hit some rolling hills that, you can kind of hear take my breath away a little bit, but still not much up to this point. You can still be, laying it down pretty hard. But again, taking into consideration what you've done and what you still have yet to do. So at this point, remember, about 23 miles in, we're only at about 1,000 feet. So we have a significant amount of elevation still yet to climb. About 25 miles in and still on Jacksonville. There's just a lot of headwind and crosswind. There's really nowhere to hide. Wide open farmland, so definitely working a little bit around 25-ish, mile 25. 26 on Jacksonville, there's about a half mile, maybe a little bit more descent, and you're picking up some pretty good speed. There's a lot of, I think I counted 4 pretty big potholes. Hopefully they're marked, but would be absolutely devastating if you ran into one of them. Pretty deep, not marked. So around mile 26, first real big descent on Jacksonville. Okay, the first real descent where you pick up some speed comes on Jacksonville between 25 and 26 miles. And to be honest, the potholes that I saw were humongous. Almost like just damaged by a vehicle or like a snowplow or something in the winter. Like the depth of these holes was like at least 5-6 inches. Praying that they're marked, but if they're not, just know your first real big descent, which about 25, 26 miles on Jacksonville, there are definitely some potholes you have to be mindful of. Okay, the descent on Jacksonville is more than a half mile. It's probably closer to a mile. It's gradual enough that you'll probably stay in arrow the whole time and be pretty comfortable. Not too fast. Okay, first real climb at Hubler Ridge, about mile 28 and a half. It was about a 1 point something, really small, 1.12 mile climb. I think like 600 feet. At one point I saw 15% grade. It's definitely, you're working for a short duration, but it was very, very short. So working hard for a short duration, and then you have at least a mile flying down the hill towards Nittany Valley Drive. I easily got over 40 miles an hour, just kind of coasting into a stop sign here now, but very quick coming back down. Really, really short climb up at around mile 28. Okay, don't take this climb lightly. It's not long, but it does get very, very steep for a very short amount of time, but it does get very steep. At one point, if you heard in my voice note, I did see the elevation or the incline get to about 15% quickly, but it did get there. So you're working really, really hard, but it is for a short duration climb, right around 28-ish miles. It's a short one, and then you're flying down a hill with plenty of time to kind of turn on the Nittany Valley, but you are gaining a lot of speed on the backside of this hill. So keep that in mind as you're climbing. There's a nice descent on the other side. Lots and lots of headwind on Nittany Valley Drive. About 31, 32 miles in. Big headwinds, big crosswinds. About 33, 34 miles in. So, 22 or so, 23 left to go. And just now finally hit about the halfway point for total elevation, around 17 or so, 1700. So half the elevation to go in about 20 some miles. So probably gonna feel a little bit tougher these last 20 or so. All right, so here we go. We're about 34 miles in, and we've just now crossed over about 1,700 feet of elevation, which is about half of the total elevation change for the course. Now, keep in mind, that's about 3/5 of the entire bike course. So you have 2/5 to go, and the same elevation that you just rode in the first 3/5-ish of the course. So back to that original point where you really need to calibrate your effort those first 20 miles. Yes, I did say, and I will stand by it as well, I did say that you can really kind of lay it down those first 20 miles. That's not to say you do it blindly. You need to do that intelligently so you understand that what you've completed and what you have left to complete. You're not hitting halfway elevation until around 34 miles. So pretty much all of Nittany Valley Drive is windy. Headwinds, crosswinds, Good thing about it is the road is smooth. Right now it's pretty heavily trafficked, but the road's pretty smooth. Just kind of cruising along at 20 miles an hour with really little effort. So can stay in aero for a really big stretch on Nittany Valley Drive. It's smooth, pretty fast, but again, lots of wind, crosswind and headwind. About 37 miles in right now. Only about a half mile into the big climb, which is 2.8 miles and like 800 or 900 feet. And there's a really crazy left-hand turn that you have to make as you're ascending. Whether or not the road's closed, I don't know, but not super safe. Not super safe on that left-hand turn. We're about 40 miles in. Okay, so this left-hand turn I'm talking about is really strange. It's like you're climbing up a hill, you take a very slight right on the same road without turning, and then there's an immediate left with cross traffic that doesn't stop. And I believe I'm looking at the road closures, I believe it's either onto Harrison or it's just right onto 144. And in either case, it does say closed and closed to local traffic only. So I don't anticipate that being a big deal. Plus, with how crazy it is or how crazy it was during the ride, I'd be shocked if they didn't have some form of closure there. And it does look like, I'm trying to remember the exact name of the road. I believe it was just directly onto 144. So it should be closed, minimally closed to local traffic. So there shouldn't be an issue. But in the course preview, it was not the safest of left-hand turns, that's for sure. All right, just finished the climb, the big 3-mile climb. Honestly, it wasn't really that bad. The first mile and a half, really the hardest part, about 7%. A couple spots where it hit 10%, but it really was not bad after that first mile and a half. About 800 or 900 total feet in about 3 miles, and it took us about 19 minutes. So just kind of be ready for that time frame. About 20 minutes, 25 minutes for some people to get the whole way up. Okay, I wanted to show you this image after the big, close to a 3-mile climb, about 900 feet elevation change. Because this image shows the average power output. Now the number's not there, but I'll let you know it was 250 average watts. And it took us about 19, close to 20 minutes. The miles per hour, you can see it changes. It fluctuates based on a little bit of a change in the grade from time to time. It does touch 9 or 10% once or twice. And again, that's not as steep as that original climb, around, 28 miles. But this climb is significantly longer. You do have to kind of strap up and be ready for that. You see the big dip right off the bat. That's that's that silly left-hand turn that I don't think we'll have to deal with on race day. But we had to come to a complete stop for a little, a few seconds to let traffic pass. But the average power for me was about 250 watts over 20 minutes. And again, the average over the entire ride for me was 165 watts. So significantly greater power output here on this hill. And keep that in mind, because that's a pretty significant effort where my heart rate also got as high. I reached a peak heart rate of, I believe it was 176 during this climb. Now, I personally will probably go a little bit harder on that hill during the actual race just to get it over with a little bit faster, especially now having ridden it, because I know it's not crazy long. I know 19 minutes sounds kind of long, and it's not short, but having ridden it, I'm I'm a lot more comfortable knowing what that terrain is like and knowing what that will feel like on race day. Having said all of that, I will not be surprised if we all see people getting off their bikes and walking this hill. It is pretty long. It's not something that should scare anybody, but I think it will get into some people's heads because up to this point, you can pretty much see the top of every single hill while you're on it. With this hill, you cannot see the top. That's a little intimidating, and I think that will lead to some people getting off their bikes and potentially walking for a few minutes, if not maybe a mile. The hardest part is that first mile and a half. Get through that first mile and a half, and then just kind of settle in and just be okay with single digit miles per hour and be okay with big watts. Be very smart with your chain ring. And this hill will not end your race if you're smart and if you plan for the hill itself, as opposed to just diving in head first and ultimately redlining and not being able to make it the whole way up. Not the end of the world, not the worst hill in the world. Let's transition to discussing that big descent that everybody has something to say about.
The big descent after the big climb of 1 mile-ish, a little bit more, really was not that bad to hold 25 miles an hour or slower. Wasn't the easiest thing in the world, but you do have to ride the brake for about a mile, and I think we stayed 21, 22 miles an hour. The turn at the bottom, it's kind of tight, but if you're under that 25, it's no issue at all. It kind of levels off for, an eighth of a mile, and you have plenty of time to settle yourself and make that turn. So, summary of that descent is it's not a big deal at all. It goes by so quickly. Just stay under 25 and be smart.
Okay, this descent was literally not an issue at all. You do have to ride the brakes the entire time. It is a straight down descent and it is quick. But it goes by so fast, and it was not difficult at all to stay under that 25 average. As you can see, it looks like it's going to be very clearly marked where the start of that measuring is going to be for that 25 mile per hour limit and where it ends. So it looks like there's even like a sign that says, this is approaching. So it looks like you'll have tons of notice where this is happening, when and where it's being measured, where it starts, where it stops. So it's not a big deal at all. Just make sure you have a little bit of a tune-up. Make sure your brake pads are good to go. Rode it the whole way down, so you do have to be prepared for that. And again, I easily stayed under the 25, averaged between 20 and 22, maybe 23, which obviously is fine. And then, there's also some concern I saw just online, social media, where people are kind of worried about the right-hand turn onto Church. It's not an issue at all. The turn itself is tight, but it's only an issue if you're flying down that hill, which of course the race director is doing a good job at preventing people from flying down that hill. So that turn, even though it's tight, is not going to be, problematic whatsoever. I don't see this as nearly the magnitude of an issue that it appears to be if you're following along with some social media communication. So don't stress about this at all. Be prepared to ride the brakes down. Pretty sure this will be very clearly communicated at the pre-race meetings as well. So I'd be shocked if you see people flying down this hill. I don't anticipate it being too big of a safety concern really at all. Really, I do see it just frustrating people that you can't go faster. But aside from that, I don't see it really being a big issue at all.
Kind of ironic you can't go 25 down that huge descent. I get it for safety reasons, but as soon as you turn the corner on Church, you can take off. There's a big downhill and you start flying. Pretty much staying arrow and nice smooth road, and just kind of take off. We're about 46 miles in. The entire Church Street 8-mile stretch is super windy again. Really windy. The hard right onto Linden comes after a lot of speed, so you have to really be careful taking a right onto Linden because you're coming off about 35 plus miles per hour down a pretty big decline. Short one, but really fast. Lots and lots of aero position on the last few miles, heading towards T2. Lots of aero, a couple rolling hills, some downhill, big speed. The hill on University Drive, right when you take a right on University Drive, is sneaky. You're like 54 miles in and you have like a 3-minute pretty steep incline.
Okay, it sounds a little silly, but that University Drive hill is actually it's a little tougher than anticipated, and honestly, it's tougher than you would want it to be at mile 56 or 55.8, whatever it is. You're literally right there. But don't take it lightly. It's pretty steep, and you're on it for a couple minutes. So just know that you have that at the very end as you're getting into transition two. So now let's actually get into what transition two looks like. You'll see the video here, riding literally right up into the parking lot of the Bryce Jordan Center, right next to Beaver Stadium, which looks absolutely awesome. It's very cool. I imagine this setup is going to look very slick. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to have some pretty high energy, and it just looks like a really cool site. Huge open parking lot, so very easy. I imagine it being very smooth in terms of the setup. So let's take a look at it. Okay, so there's your entry into transition two. You can see it's a really big parking lot. Again, right in between Bryce Jordan Center and Beaver Stadium. I imagine that'll be a really fun and high energetic transition area. So pretty simple from what it looks like. Next up, you'll see, the run course. I'll be honest, I didn't run the run course, but I am familiar with, where it is. There's a lot going on: U-turns, turnarounds, some short out and backs on roads. And my guess is the race director likely wanted to keep this thing on campus because it's going to be a lot of fun and easy for spectators and things like that. So I don't foresee this being any issue. I don't foresee the run course being difficult or challenging, honestly, at all. The elevation change is so minimal, and it's somewhat condensed, so you'll be able to see a lot of people will be able to see you, and I imagine that that'll make for a pretty high energy run. So really no issues there. Okay, really the last thing I want to mention is just be very mindful of what you should be doing and how you should be preparing your transition areas. I have to give a lot of credit to the race director and the host of this event for kind of staying on top of communicating this to athletes. They actually just recently posted something this afternoon about three different bags that will have access to kind of put things into for the morning of T1, of course, and then also T2. We have a red, a white, and a blue bag. Those descriptions I uploaded here in terms of the images, but they're also, of course, posted in public by the race director and that staff. So kudos to them for staying on top of that and communicating that to the athletes. Just be mindful of what needs to go in each bag. Again, I'm not really going to coach you through what should be in your transition bag. To be honest, it needs to be something that you're familiar with. There's no magic or secret sauce for what goes into these bags. Make sure that you're prepared and have what you need from swim to bike, from bike to run, and anything you might need for your morning go bag. Just just do your own due diligence and prepare ahead of time so that this is a really easy and smooth process. Because again, there are two different transition areas, so it will be important that you prepare accordingly for all three of those bags. Okay, that's all I really have. I'm kind of wrapped up for today's podcast. Again, I apologize. I really only rode the bike course, but I do, I hope that working through a little bit of the athlete guide, discussing the transition areas, chatting, briefly about what the swim is going to look like and feel like in terms of how, the distance or the proximity to T1 and maybe some of the intricacies of the run course, or maybe why the run course was designed the way it is. Hopefully all that was really, really helpful. And I hope you also have some peace of mind with the bike course. I know, it is, there's quite a bit of elevation. So hopefully hearing some of my own experience and then also some of my insight was really, really helpful for you. In any case, I hope to see you out there, whether you're in the relay or you're racing the full event. I think it's going to be a great event. I hope the weather's great. Don't ask me about the water temperature. Still have no clue, but I really hope the weather's great. I think it could make for an awesome, awesome day. That's all I have. Again, my name is Hayden. I'm the owner and head coach at Hill Pursuit, also a team coach for Victory Multisport. You'll probably see me and a bunch of other Victory Multisport Hill Pursuit athletes out on the course. So, say hi. And if you'd like to follow along with Hill Pursuit, check out the website, hillpursuit.com. This podcast and all other podcast episodes stream wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, Apple, Google Podcasts, things like that. And of course, check out the YouTube channel for other podcast episodes, some race day stuff, some other fun training videos. Follow along. If you have any questions about coaching, nutrition, anything like that, reach out to me directly, hillpursuit@gmail.com. I would love to have a conversation, answer any questions. Of course, you can comment anything here. But again, start a conversation, ask any questions, hillpursuit@gmail.com. I would love to connect with you. Good luck if you're racing. Have a great event, plan accordingly, stay relaxed and really just enjoy yourself out there, because I think this is going to be a really, really fun event that I hope is around for many, many years to come. All right. Have a great race. Good luck. And I'll see you out there on the course.